The town of Muidka in Pakistan's Punjab province was hit in the quiet hours before dawn on Wednesday. These are the moments in the aftermath of the Indian missile strikes, which hit the area. Here was only one of at least 9 targets across Pakistan, and Pakistan-administered Kashmir. India said the strikes were done in retaliation for last month's deadly massacre of Indian tourists in Kashmir, which they blamed on Pakistan-based militants.
These actions were measured, non-escalatory, proportionate, and responsible. They focused on dismantling the terrorist infrastructure and disabling terrorists likely to be sent across to India. You would also recall that the Security Council on 25th April 2025 had issued a press statement on the Pahalgam terror attack, underlining, and I quote, the need to hold perpetrators, organizers, financiers, and sponsors of this reprehensible act of terrorism accountable and bring them to justice, unquote. India's latest actions should be seen in this context.
Meanwhile, Pakistani lawmakers applauded in parliament when the country's prime minister vowed to retaliate against India.
माजी की तरह छुपकर पाकिस्तान के ऊपर हमला करने की नापाक कोशिश की, लेकिन अल्लाह ताला के बेपाया फजल करम से पाकिस्तान के 24 करोड़ अवाम की दुआओं से हमारी बहादुर और दलेर अफवाज पाकिस्तान ने हिंदुस्तान के इस मकरूह हमले का मुंह तोड़ जवाब देकर उस तारीख रात को चांदनी रात बना दिया।
India claimed the strikes were centered on locations tied to groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed, which have been banned and internationally designated as terrorist entities. India added that they have hit 24 targets, including sites which they claimed were used to plan attacks, such as the massacre in April, where several gunmen singled out Hindu men and killed 26 Indian tourists. Meanwhile, parts of missiles laid scattered across Muidka as officials piece together remains. One Indian missile also damaged a mosque near a former Lashkar-e-Taiba complex and killed 13. Additionally, another strike hit a seminary in Bahawalpur, which was once tied to the Jaish-e-Mohammed group. The Pakistani military said the strikes killed at least 26 civilians, including women and children, with dozens more injured.
The Pakistani military has a proclaimed policy of what they call quid pro quo plus, which is a fancy way of saying whatever India does, we will do at least that in return, but also possibly a little bit more. So 2019, after a suicide bomber killed about 40 paramilitary police officers in Kashmir, India took the then unprecedented step of conducting airstrikes into Pakistan proper. And a couple days later, the Pakistani Air Force retaliated. And after each side had, perhaps we might say, assuaged its honor, the two, to use a boxing analogy, returned to their corners of the ring, and the bell rang and tensions de-escalated.
The human cost of this week's strikes have been widely felt by many. Funeral processions have begun for some of the dead, including victims of the attack against the Islamic seminary in Muidka. On the other hand, air raid drills have intensified in India as authorities prepare for further escalation. Sirens wail and warnings were issued while schools and civilians become part of response exercises. Aside from retaliation, many now fear that this cycle of attacks could spiral into full-scale conflict between two nuclear-armed neighbors. India has named its Operation Sindoor, which alludes to the red powder worn by married Hindu women and refers to those who became widowed in last month's Kashmir killings. However, the military might of Pakistan is now on the rise.
When we're considering just overall the general trajectory of India and Pakistan military modernization, although Pakistan has a significantly smaller defense budget, one of its huge assets is the fact that its main weapon supplier is China, and China delivers. So we've seen modernization of the Pakistani Air Force in terms of jointly produced and developed fighter jets. And then with respect to the air defense, Pakistan is reported to have gained access to sort of Chinese variants of Russian air defense systems. So something that might be seen as the equivalent of kind of the S-400 system or something kind of comparable to that.
Meanwhile, India continues to train emergency crews and prepare civil defense units aside from bolstering their preparedness across cities, including New Delhi and Hyderabad. On the opposing side, defiant chants filled the streets of Karachi as protesters rail against India and vow to continue resistance. Additionally, Pakistan has closed its borders, expelled diplomats, and accused India of killing civilians on false pretenses. As tensions teeter on the brink, both sides speak of honor, defense, and deterrence. It is the worst flare-up in the region since 2019, since missiles were fired and civilians were killed. Meanwhile, the world is watching warily with eyes now on Pakistan and the choice it makes next.